You see, they drag you from your bed at dawn, not with a gentle tap on the shoulder, but with a violence that shatters the fragile peace of the morning. The year is 1512. The city is Florence. And the man they seize, the one whose life is about to be systematically dismantled, is Niccolò Machiavelli. He's not a warrior or a criminal, but a statesman, a thinker, a man of letters. And that, in a world ruled by brute force, makes him the most dangerous man of all. They don't just take his body, they take his power, his position, his pride. They break him on the rack, not to get information, but to break his will, to remind him of his insignificance. They strip him of everything he built, every ounce of influence, every thread of dignity, and then, as the final insult, they banish him. Not to a prison cell, but to a farm, just outside the city walls. They expect him to simply fade away, to become a ghost. They believe they have crushed him, that the man who once moved the levers of power will now spend his days wallowing in self-pity, replaying his mistakes, wondering where it all went wrong. And for a moment, perhaps he does. The easy path is to surrender to despair, to become a monument to your own brokenness. But Machiavelli did something else, something far more dangerous, far more revolutionary. He didn't just survive. He didn't just heal. He became ruthless. His exile wasn't a punishment. It was a classroom, a dark, brutal, and unforgiving one. He looked not inward, but outward. He didn't waste time nursing his wounds. He studied them. The men who betrayed him, the systems that crushed him, the psychological games that stripped him of everything. He became a cold, dispassionate analyst of power. He wasn't looking for a way back to his old life. He was looking for the operating system that ran the world, the hidden code beneath every human interaction. He wanted to understand the rules of the game so completely that no one could ever play him again. From that cold analysis, from the depths of his pain and humiliation, he wrote a book. Not a book about how to be a better person, not a guide to kindness or forgiveness. He wrote a manual for understanding power so completely, so brutally, that you could become the master of your own destiny, an architect of your own world. It was a book that taught you to see the trap before you step in it, to recognize the game before you even know you're playing. And that book, written in the lonely stillness of his exile, became The Prince, one of the most feared and misunderstood texts in human history. You see, most people think power is about what you have, money, position, influence. But Machiavelli discovered it's about what you understand. It's about seeing the game others are blind to. It's about recognizing the patterns that repeat in every betrayal, every manipulation, every moment when someone tries to make you small. They tried to destroy him by taking everything away. Instead, they gave him the greatest gift possible, the motivation to decode the system that crushed him. And now, 500 years later, that same system is still running. The same psychological games, the same human weaknesses, the same predictable moves disguised as random chaos. The difference is, now you have the manual. This isn't about becoming a better version of who you were. This is about understanding the architecture of power so deeply that you become someone entirely different. Someone who sees the trap before stepping in it. Someone who recognizes the game before others even know they're playing. If you're ready to learn what they don't want you to know, if you're ready to study power instead of nursing pain, comment right now. I study power, not pain. Because what you're about to discover isn't just psychology. It's the operating system that runs beneath every human interaction. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. My own life has had moments just like that. Moments when the ground gives way and you find yourself in freefall. I remember it clearly. The phone call that came late on a Tuesday night. The dispassionate voice on the other end, telling me the project was gone, the funding was pulled, my entire world as I knew it had just been erased. It wasn't a violent physical assault like Machiavelli's, but the psychological blow was just as brutal. It was a cold surgical strike that left me breathless. They didn't just fire me. They made me irrelevant. They moved on without a second thought, and I was left standing in the rubble, feeling the cold wind of a new, unknown reality. In that moment, 1,000 emotions warred for dominance. Shame, despair, a burning, bitter rage. I felt a visceral need to understand what had happened, to find someone to blame, to justify my own pain. I spent days replaying every conversation, every email, every tiny interaction, searching for the single mistake that had led to my downfall. I reached out to people, hoping for sympathy, for validation, for someone to tell me it wasn't my fault. I wanted to hear that I was the victim of circumstance, a casualty of a cruel and unfair world. I wanted to believe that if I had just done one thing differently, none of this would have happened. And that's the trap, isn't it? The one most people fall into. When you're broken, your first instinct is to ask, why me? You see the world through a lens of personal injustice. You fixate on the betrayal, the unfairness, the cruelty. You spend all your energy reliving the past, trying to make sense of what can't be made sense of. You become a prisoner of your own narrative, a sad story on repeat. You seek healing, but all you find is more pain. It's a psychological addiction, the need to understand why you were hurt. But the truth is, the answer is rarely satisfying, and the search itself keeps you weak. I remember lying awake at night, my mind a churning storm of what-ifs and if-onlys. I called a friend, an older man who had seen more than his fair share of life's betrayals and triumphs. I poured out my story, expecting him to offer condolences, but he didn't. He listened patiently, and when I was done, he said, "Okay, you've had your moment. Now what?" His words cut through my self-pity like a knife. Now what? The question hung in the air, cold and unforgiving. He wasn't interested in my pain. He was interested in my next move. He told me something that changed my perspective entirely. "The pain is not the point," he said. "The pain is the data. It's information. Your job isn't to feel sorry for yourself. It's to analyze what just happened. What weakness did they exploit? What pattern did you miss? What signs were you too blind to see? Your enemies are your greatest teachers. Don't waste the lesson." That conversation was my turning point. It forced me to stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What did this teach me?" I shifted from the emotional to the analytical. I stopped seeing myself as a victim and started seeing myself as a student. The pain didn't disappear, but its purpose changed. It wasn't a punishment. It was a tuition fee. I was paying to understand a system, a cruel, beautiful, and unforgiving system that I had been blind to my entire life. I was learning to study power, not pain. And in that moment, in the darkest part of my life, I began to become something new. Not a survivor, but an architect. Not a victim, but a strategist. The old me was gone, and there was no going back. Once I stopped asking why and started asking what, the world began to reveal itself as something entirely different. It's a profound shift, from seeing life as a series of random events that happen to you, to understanding it as a system of predictable forces that can be harnessed. Machiavelli didn't call it luck or fate. He gave it a name: Fortuna. And he didn't see it as a benign, unpredictable force. He saw it as a hostile one, a raging river that seeks to destroy everything you build, every plan you make, every fragile hope you cling to. Think about your biggest disasters. The business deal that collapsed at the last minute, the relationship that imploded without warning, the unexpected illness that derailed your life. We tend to see these as random acts of God, as bad luck. We throw our hands up in the air and declare, "It's just the way it is." But what if that's exactly why you lose? What if Machiavelli was right and Fortuna isn't random at all? What if it operates on a hidden logic, a brutal, unforgiving pattern that only the prepared can see? Machiavelli wrote that Fortuna controls half of your actions. Half. That's a staggering number. It's an admission that there are forces far beyond your immediate control. But here's the key. He didn't say it controls all of your actions. The other half, he wrote, belongs to you. That's where your virtue lives. Not the kind of virtue you learn in Sunday school. Patience, kindness, forgiveness. He meant something else entirely. He meant virtù, your capacity to impose your will on a hostile world. It's your ability to see the patterns, to build your defenses before the flood comes, and to strike when chaos shows weakness. When I started to apply this to my own life, the shift was staggering. I looked back at the collapse of my project, not as a tragedy, but as a case study. I stopped replaying the phone call and started analyzing the weeks, the months leading up to it. I saw the signals I had missed, the small, seemingly insignificant shifts in corporate strategy that were actually massive tectonic plate movements, the subtle change in tone in emails from my superiors, the way certain conversations abruptly ended when I walked into a room. My pain was a direct result of my blindness. I had been playing a game I didn't even know I was in, and I was losing because I was operating under the illusion of calm. Fortuna, the chaotic force, had been sending me warnings. My pain was the sound of the alarm I had chosen not to hear. I was unprepared. I hadn't built my dams. I hadn't prepared for the flood. I had been hoping for the best when I should have been preparing for the worst. Most people spend their lives hoping for a quiet, predictable river. But that's not how the world works. The river is always moving, and sometimes it's going to flood. You either get swept away, or you learn how to build a boat. Machiavelli wrote that Fortuna favors the young because they're fiercer. It's not about age. It's about aggression. It's about a refusal to play defense when the world attacks. The weak build walls and pray. The powerful build dams and redirect the river. So right now, while life is calm, what are you building? What defenses are you preparing? Because Fortuna is watching, testing, waiting for you to get comfortable. If you're ready to stop hoping for safety and start engineering control, comment right now. I don't pray to survive the storm. I become the storm. Because that brings us to the most dangerous law of all. That blindness isn't a bug in human psychology. It's a feature. And Machiavelli weaponized it. He discovered something so simple, yet so devastating, that it changes every human interaction from that moment on. He wrote, "Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, for everyone can see, but few can touch." Translation: what people see matters more than what actually is. Most people never get close enough to touch the truth. They judge from a distance, making decisions based on surface impressions, on what is visible and easily consumable. And that, he realized, is your greatest advantage. This isn't about deception for deception's sake. It's about engineering perception. It's about taking control of the narrative before someone else defines it for you. Machiavelli identified 5 sacred appearances a prince must master. You must seem merciful, faithful, humane, upright, and religious. Notice he said, seem, not be. Because here's the brutal reality he uncovered. If you actually are all those things all the time, you will be destroyed by people who are not. The world is full of predators who feast on genuine kindness and unwavering loyalty. They will mistake your mercy for weakness and your faithfulness for naivete. I saw this in my own life. I had always believed in being my authentic self, in being transparent and honest. I thought that if I did good work and treated people with respect, that would be enough. It wasn't. The people who took me down weren't better than me. They were just better at the game. They projected confidence even when they were insecure. They appeared calm even when they were calculating. They seemed generous in public even when they were strategic in private. They understood the power of the facade, and I was too busy being authentic to even notice the game was being played. The masses, what Machiavelli called the vulgar, are easy to fool because they want to believe the surface. They don't have the time or energy to investigate deeper. They see a confident posture and assume competence. They see religious devotion and assume moral authority. They see your composed exterior and never suspect the strategic mind operating beneath. You're not being fake. You're being a strategist. You're building a reputation that protects you, a fortress of perception that keeps the vulgar at bay. But here's the key, the part that separates the master from the amateur. You must be able to switch. You must be able to appear merciful while retaining the capacity for ruthlessness. You must project faithfulness while remaining strategically flexible. You must look religious while thinking like a tactician. Your reputation becomes your most powerful weapon. People react to who they think you are before they ever discover who you actually are. And by the time they figure it out, you've already achieved your objective. This isn't about being a monster. It's about not being a meal. It's about understanding that your reputation is your armor. It's the first line of defense against those who would seek to harm you. When you master the art of perception, you stop reacting to the world and start designing it. You become an illusionist, a psychological architect. And once you see how easily people are fooled, you can never go back to being one of them. If you're ready to engineer how others see you instead of hoping they understand you, comment right now. They see what I allow. They believe what I design. Because next we explore the deadliest skill of all. That combination, the predator that thinks and the thinker that kills, is what Machiavelli called the secret to ultimate power. It's the moment you stop being one thing and become two. He wrote that there are 2 ways of fighting, the one by law, the other by force. The first method is that of men, the second of beasts. But here's what most people miss. You can't survive with just one method. The world is too dangerous. People are too unpredictable. So you must become both man and beast. But not just any beast. The lion and the fox. The lion represents pure, overwhelming force. It's the part of you that, when someone crosses a line, when they test your boundaries, when they mistake your strategic patience for weakness, unleashes swift, decisive, and unmistakable action. The lion doesn't negotiate. It doesn't debate. It dominates. It is the raw, unadulterated power that reminds everyone exactly what the consequences of their actions will be. But the lion has a fatal weakness. It's blind to traps. It charges in, relying on its strength, and often falls victim to a cunning snare. Pure force can't see the hidden agenda, the subtle manipulation, the web of lies before it's too late. It's a liability in a world of complex psychological warfare. That's where the fox comes in. The fox sees the trap before stepping into it. It reads the room, recognizes the patterns of deceit, and anticipates the betrayal before it happens. The fox is the strategist. It negotiates when negotiation serves its purpose, and lies when truth becomes a liability. It is cunning, adaptable, and subtle. But the fox has its own weakness. It cannot fight the wolf in open combat. It can outsmart it, but it cannot outmatch it in a direct confrontation. See the problem? Lions die in snares. Foxes die in open combat. But a creature that can switch between both natures, that's unstoppable. Most people are trapped in a single strategy mindset. They're either always aggressive or always diplomatic, always trusting or always suspicious. That predictability is what gets them killed. It makes them vulnerable to a world that will exploit their one-dimensional nature. My own journey through this was a painful lesson in duality. For years, I was the fox. I was the diplomat, the strategist, the one who tried to outsmart every problem. I believed in subtle influence and quiet manipulation. I avoided direct conflict at all costs. But I was still getting hurt. I was still getting trapped. My enemies saw my reluctance to engage in open conflict as a weakness, and they exploited it mercilessly. I was a fox in a world full of lions, and I was getting eaten alive. The pivotal moment was when I realized that being the fox was not enough. I had to cultivate the lion. I had to learn to say no with a force that left no room for negotiation. I had to learn to set boundaries and enforce them with a finality that made people hesitate to cross me again. I had to recognize that some battles cannot be won with cunning. They can only be won with force. You, too, are now different. You read the situation first, then deploy the appropriate nature. When the threat is open, you become the lion. When the threat is hidden, you become the fox. This isn't about being a hypocrite. It's about being an adaptive master of your own life. You are a man, but you carry the beast within you, ready to be unleashed. If you're ready to stop being predictable, if you're ready to become the predator that adapts, comment right now. I am the lion that strikes and the fox that vanishes. The mathematics of elimination is brutal, but precise. And Machiavelli perfected it through one of history's most calculated executions. It's a moment that most people would call evil, but a strategist would call genius. Cesare Borgia, a powerful and ambitious duke, needed to pacify a lawless region called Romagna. The people were disloyal, the nobles were rebellious, and chaos reigned supreme. So Borgia appointed a vicious lieutenant, a man named Ramiro dell'Orqua, and gave him unlimited authority. Dell'Orqua was a ruthless enforcer. He crushed the rebellion through pure terror, showing no mercy, no quarter. He was, in a word, effective. Mission accomplished. But then, the people began to hate Borgia for the cruelty. The fear had turned to resentment, and resentment was a powder keg waiting for a spark. Borgia saw this coming. He knew that the people's hatred for dell'Orqua would eventually turn on him. So he made his masterpiece move. He had dell'Orqua seized, cut in half, and displayed in the public square with a block of wood and a bloody knife left beside the body. One stroke, multiple objectives achieved. The people got their revenge, and their hatred was instantly converted into a perverse sense of gratitude toward Borgia, who now appeared to be a just and merciful ruler. Borgia himself looked like a man who cared about justice and was willing to punish even his most trusted men for their excesses, and, most importantly, Everyone learned what happened to those who went too far. The message was unmistakable. This is what Machiavelli called well-used cruelty. It is swift, decisive, and finite. It is a single, surgical act of finality, and it is immediately converted to benefit. Most people do the opposite. They make half measures. They give empty threats they don't follow through on. They hint at consequences, but never deliver. They give second chances to people who've already shown their true nature. That's badly used cruelty. It's hesitant, repeated, and it grows over time. It creates more enemies than it eliminates. It shows you are weak and indecisive, and it invites people to keep testing your boundaries. I learned this the hard way. I used to be the kind of person who would let things slide. I would give people the benefit of the doubt, even when they'd shown me who they were. I was afraid of confrontation, afraid of hurting people's feelings. I'd make gradual withdrawals from toxic relationships instead of cutting them off completely. I'd stop answering calls slowly, hoping they'd get the hint, and then be surprised when they kept coming back, pushing and pushing. I thought I was being compassionate, but all I was doing was being cruel to myself and unclear to them. The moment I began to apply the mathematics of elimination, my life changed. I learned to make the cut so clean and so final that everyone watching understood the standard. I stopped giving warnings to people who had already shown their disloyalty. I stopped letting people trespass on my emotional and mental territory. The goal isn't to be cruel, it's to be clear. One decisive action teaches 100 lessons. One public example prevents 1,000 future tests. When people see that you'll actually follow through, they stop testing your boundaries. They stop trying to manipulate you. They stop seeing you as a potential victim. It's not about revenge. It's about self-preservation. It's about becoming the architect of your own peace. A person who operates from a place of strength, not fear. If you're ready to stop making threats you won't keep, if you're ready to make decisions that stick, comment right now. I strike once. The lesson lasts forever. Because next, we decode the algorithm that runs every human interaction you'll ever have. That algorithm is simpler than you think, and darker than most people want to admit. Machiavelli decoded the human program in one devastating observation. Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. They shun danger and are greedy for profit. This isn't cynicism. This is pattern recognition. This isn't a hateful condemnation of humanity. It's a cold, clinical analysis of a species. Machiavelli wasn't saying some men are like this, or most men. He was saying men, as in the fundamental code that runs human behavior. Watch any betrayal, any broken promise, any moment when someone chooses their comfort over your trust. You'll see the same program running. Self-interest over everything else. Here's why this matters. If you build relationships assuming people are inherently good, you're building on quicksand. You're setting yourself up for an endless cycle of disappointment and pain. You'll keep asking, how could they do this? When the answer is, because they're programmed to. But if you design systems that work with human selfishness instead of against it, you become unshakable. You create a world where it benefits people to be loyal, where it costs them to be disloyal. Machiavelli famously wrote that it is safer to be feared than to be loved. And that's a hard truth for many people to accept. We are taught our whole lives to seek love, to be kind, to be agreeable. We are told that love is the ultimate currency. But love is an emotion, and emotions are fickle. They come and go with the changing winds of circumstance. People will abandon you when it benefits them. They will forget your kindness the moment it becomes inconvenient. They will break promises because the desire for personal gain is a stronger motivator than a feeling of gratitude. Fear, however, speaks to a deeper layer of human programming: self-preservation. People might break a promise to you, but they won't risk a consequence that genuinely threatens them. They won't cross a boundary if the penalty is severe and certain. They may not love you, but they will respect the consequences of disrespecting you. That's why gratitude has an expiration date. That's why loyalty is conditional. That's why the friend who borrowed money starts avoiding you, and the person you helped in a crisis suddenly forgets your name. It's not personal. It's just the algorithm. I used to hate this truth. I used to fight against it, trying to prove that my kindness and generosity could overcome human nature. I gave and was met with indifference and betrayal. I was the person who was always available, always ready to lend an ear or a hand, and I became the person whose help was expected and whose presence was taken for granted. My giving was creating a sense of entitlement in others, not a sense of gratitude. But the moment I stopped trying to transcend human nature and started working with it, everything changed. I stopped expecting humans to be angels and started designing relationships where it was in their best interest to be loyal. I created mutual benefit instead of one-sided favors. I started inspiring respect through strength instead of affection through kindness. I built relationships where abandoning me would cost more than staying loyal. It's a cold way to look at the world, but it's a protected way. You're not a monster. You're a realist. If you're ready to see people as they are, instead of as you wish they were, comment right now, I don't hate their nature. I exploit it. Because next, we turn every painful experience into tactical intelligence. This transformation isn't gradual, it's architectural. You're not becoming a better version of who you were. You're becoming someone entirely different. The old self, the one who reacted to chaos and was a victim of circumstance, is gone. You've been systematically reconstructing your entire operating system, piece by piece, from the ground up. Here's what you've built: a mind that sees Fortuna's patterns before they strike, an early warning system that others can't see, a presence that controls perception before truth becomes relevant, a psychological fortress built on reputation, dual natures, the lion and the fox, that adapt faster than others can predict, making you a master of any situation, surgical precision that eliminates problems without creating enemies, a clean cut that leaves no room for future doubt, an intelligent system that turns pain into power, where every betrayal is a lesson and every disappointment is data. Fortress protocols that make you psychologically untouchable, where your mind is sovereign territory and only quality people can enter. And finally, a gravity that commands respect without demanding it, a quiet strength that transforms any room you walk into. This isn't self-improvement, it's strategic reconstruction. Machiavelli wrote that he who controls his mind controls the world. But control isn't suppression, it's architecture. It's building a system so sophisticated that external chaos can't penetrate your inner calm, so calculated that others' emotions can't destabilize your decisions, so complete that you operate from choice, not reaction. When this system integrates, people notice without understanding why. They treat you differently. They hesitate before challenging you. They respect boundaries they didn't even know you'd set. Because you've stopped being someone things happen to. You've become someone who makes things happen. You don't argue with reality anymore. You engineer it. You don't hope for respect. You command it. You don't wait for opportunities. You create them. That's the final evolution, from a victim of circumstances to an architect of outcomes. It's a lonely path. Not everyone will understand it. Some will call you cold, calculating, or detached. They'll try to guilt you into returning to your old self, the person they could manipulate and control. Don't listen to them. They're just upset that their old programming doesn't work on you anymore. Let them go. The ones who matter will stay. The ones who can match your standards will find you. If this transformation has already begun in you, if you recognize the shift happening, comment right now. I am no longer becoming. I am. The world adjusts accordingly. The prince lives within you now. Act accordingly. You now possess what took Machiavelli a lifetime of suffering to discover. The question is, will you use it? If this transformed how you see power, hit that like button. You've joined the ranks of those who understand the game, while others remain blind to it. Subscribe to the Stoic philosophy for more decoded wisdom from history's most dangerous minds. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. But knowledge with action, that's revolution. The weak will keep scrolling. The future rulers will subscribe. Which are you?
Thank you for watching this video here on the Stoic philosophy. If you found value in this, I invite you to explore more videos on the channel. There's so much more wisdom to uncover. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.